Are on YouTube right now. You're
Okay,
set.
thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
This is the February 4th, 2021 meeting of the Buckman Direct Diversion Board, and I'll call the meeting to order. Karen,
Yes,
will you please call the roll?
I will. Counselor Vihil Coppler,
Here?
Commissioner Hanson,
Present.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Here.
Mr. Helms,
Here.
Counselor Romero Worth,
Here.
and Mr. Egelhoff.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item is item 3, approval of the agenda. Are there any changes from staff?
I was muted. Yes, there are. Well, there's one change. Staff, after considerable discussion today and yesterday, would like to recommend that consent item 8A be removed from this agenda and brought back in March. There are some unanswered questions that staff would like to discuss at the staff level before bringing this item back. And so the recommendation is to take it off of this agenda and to move it to the March board meeting.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I so move.
Second.
Okay, seconded, moved by Commissioner Hamilton and seconded by JC Helms. Karen, will you please call for the voice vote?
Yes, Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Mr. Helms,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson,
Yes.
Chair Vihil Coppler.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, next item is approval of the consent agenda. Do I have, okay, Commissioner Hamilton?
I would move to approve the consent agenda, just making it clear that that's only item 8B at this point.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Hanson. Karen, will you please call for the voice vote?
Yes, Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes. Sorry, there are big planes flying over my house right now. I don't know what's happening.
Mine
I
too.
heard that too.
Mr. Helms,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson,
Yes.
and Chair Vihil Coppler.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next item is approval of the minutes for January 7th, 2021. And I will state for the record and our minutes that the only matter discussed during the executive session of our last board meeting of January 7th, 2021 was the matter as stated in the motion to go into executive session and no further action was taken. So with that, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of January 7th?
I move to
Commissioner
approve the minutes of January 7th.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Hanson, seconded by Commissioner Hamilton to approve the January 7th minutes. Karen, will you please call for the voice vote?
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Mr. Helms,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson,
Yes.
Chair Vihil Coppler.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Next item is matters from the public, and I believe we have one person who would like to make a public comment. So could you please let Miss Aarons in?
I will unmute her.
Thank you.
Ms. Aarons, you have the floor.
Hi, good
Hi,
afternoon.
welcome.
Hi. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I am with Concerned Citizens for Nuclear Safety, and we would appreciate an update about the incomplete application of the Department of Energy and Los Alamos County to the New Mexico State Engineer to transfer 679 acre-feet per year in water rights to the hexavalent chromium plume remediation project at Los Alamos National Laboratory. Thank you in advance for your consideration of our request. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Appreciate it. Okay, next item is number 7A, monthly update on the BDD operations. Randy Segru.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. For January 2021, BDD diversions and deliveries averaged a million gallons per day. Raw water diversions were 4.3 million gallons per day average. Our drinking water deliveries through our booster stations 4A and 5A combined averaged about 4.14 million gallons per day. Las Campanas did not divert in January. Our on-site treated and non-treated storage was about 160,000 gallons per day. BDD is providing approximately 69% of the water supply to the city and county for the month. Page 2 does have a regional demand drought summary and some updated storage information. The BDD year-to-date diversions for the first part of the year now for January were approximately 133 million gallons. That is essentially it. We've had a good month in January considering the weather and the river flows. I stand for questions.
Okay, are there any comments from the board? Okay. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you so much.
Great job on your report. Next item is item 7B, a report from the facilities manager, Rick Carpenter.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I don't have a whole lot to report out on at this meeting. It is sort of our slow time of year. I have been trying to keep the board up to date on our efforts to fill several critical positions at the BDD, namely the automation and security position that's been vacant for a while, Mackey's old position, financial administrator, and then the maintenance supervisor position. All three of those are in process. They are loaded up in the city's Munis system. They currently reside there pending further action by the city's HR department. And that's all I have to update the board on.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hanson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm wondering, Rick, if at the next meeting we could have an update on the status of the MOU with Lano and the triennial review and the chromium 6 plume.
Madam Chair, yes, that's really timely. I think we've had some discussions at the staff level to do just that, and it's on our radar to make that presentation at the next meeting.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Rick? All right. Thank you. Thank you, Rick. Next item is item 7C, proposed San Juan Chama return flow pipeline status update. Jesse Roach.
Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you. I will share my screen and step through some slides that are also in the packet. These slides were presented to City Council about 3 weeks ago, and so they may be a little bit familiar to the councilors. So we are getting, we just wanted to provide sort of an update on where we are with our San Juan Chama return flow pipeline, and also a little bit of how we got here. So we, as a water utility for the city, do engage in long-range planning on a regular basis. And we've been doing that for at least 30 years, probably longer. And I wanted to point out some of the results that we have taken from our most recent efforts. In 2015, the Santa Fe Basin Study, we, for the first time, and this was in collaboration with the county, took climate change consideration into the long-range planning process. And a couple of the key results that came out of that was that if we do nothing, almost independent of demand, if we do nothing, climate change, it does represent a threat and a potential for shortages in our system. This graph is from the Basin Study Update, which showed sort of the timing of those potential shortages. One of the interesting things on this graph, and so this is showing the annual shortage in thousands of acre feet per year on the y-axis and the year on the x-axis. There's a range of uncertainty in the shading, which is representative of the uncertainty associated with global climate models, the GCMs. But also there's a large uncertainty in demand in terms of what will the demand for potable water be out into the future. But the takeaway is that we need to continue to work towards being ready for a changing climate and potential growing demand. And the low-hanging fruit that came out of this study, as it had for multiple studies prior, was that the effluent that we generate at the Paseo Real Water Reclamation Facility is a key to our long-term resiliency. So we followed that study up with a 2017 study called the Santa Fe Water Reuse Feasibility Study. And this essentially was trying to answer the question is, what is the best way, the most resource efficient way, the best way from a triple bottom line evaluation to utilize that effluent. And returning water originating from the BDD to the Rio Grande it was contemplated in the original BDD design, and it's been identified in multiple rounds of planning as sort of the preferred. Well, it has been identified as an idea going back all the way to the 70s, pre-BDD, but it is this 2017 feasibility study identified a return flow credit as the preferred alternative for utilizing effluent to increase our potable water supply. An overview of water resources from the 4 different sources in the city for the past, so this is 2013 through 2019, so that's 7 years of data. And we see that BDD is our largest single source at the city. And it has represented 45% of our potable water during that period, about a third from Canyon Road, also surface water, and then the remainder from our 2 groundwater supplies, about equally split between them. One of the key aspects to this return flow pipeline is it only is using its proposed use is only for San Juan Chama water. And San Juan Chama water represents a portion of New Mexico's legal share of Colorado River water. I think everyone on this call is probably familiar with San Juan Chama water, but just sort of to repeat some of the main facts are the city's full allocation is 5,230 acre feet per year. And we do have the right to fully consume that imported water. So if we look at, in this, excuse me, the wheel here on the right is the same one I just showed before, showing the distribution of water sources that from where we have produced potable water from 2013 through 2019. In that same period, on an annual average basis, almost 2/3 of that water is actually collected through the sewer collection system and flows to the Paseo Real Water Reclamation Facility. The other third is lost to outdoor use or leaks in the system. And so we're looking at 5,600 acre feet approximately of influent over that period of time, of which 2,666 acre feet a year on average were what we will call unconsumed San Juan Chama water arriving at the reclamation facility. Also, I should have said, I would be very happy if anyone interrupts me as I go. That helps me sort of understand what I'm explaining well and what I might need to explain a little bit further. So please feel free. And then this is what if we had this return flow pipeline in place, this is what the system would have looked like during that same 7 years, 2013 through 2019. There still would have remained almost 2,000 acre feet per year of discharge to the lower Santa Fe River, which for comparison's sake is about half of the total Santa Fe River resource that flows into McClure on an annual basis. And then there would have been this other amount available to return to the Rio Grande for a return flow credit. So how does that look? When we talk about return flow credits, what do we mean? So currently, and the goal is for us as the city to achieve full consumption of San Juan Chama water by getting a credit for what we return to the river. We do not get any credit for discharge that we make to the lower Santa Fe River. So in the current situation, any amount of water that the city wants to divert as San Juan Chama water at BDD has to be released completely from upstream reservoirs, and in addition, a small carriage fee. So it's about 2% from Heron to BDD. So that is currently everything that we divert is in the river from upstream reservoir releases. The proposed return flow pipeline would, for the same diversion, so these arrows are representative of the sort of magnitude of the diversion. With the same diversion from the river could be supported with less of a release from the upstream reservoirs, because the river essentially would be made whole from a quantity perspective by returning effluent to a point just downstream of the diversion location. So there would be somewhere on the order of hundreds of feet between the diversion and the return. So no actual molecules of effluent that are being returned to the river would be diverted into the BDD facility. But the river itself, if you look sort of from above the diversion and return complex, there would be no change to native Rio Grande flows from above the diversion complex to below the diversion and return complex. So ultimately, we're trying to make the same diversions at BDD with a smaller release from upstream reservoirs, and that's how we stretch our San Juan Chama water. This is kind of specific to some of the things that the city has done in the last year, a little bit more than a year now, since in December of 2019, resolution was passed essentially calling for the water division to develop 40 and 80-year water plans with public outreach and community input as important parts of shaping those plans, and that we look into implementing the design and construction of a return flow pipeline. So from the planning perspective first, we have laid out a 5-year planning process, and we have made it through the first year of that planning process, in which we engaged with the public and have sort of finalized this 5-year plan. This current calendar year, 2021, we are slated to develop supply and demand projections with the latest generation of climate change models. And then next year, utilize an updated water model, a water resources model, to evaluate what the shortages might look like without any action, without any new resource development. And then in the 4th year of the process, evaluate adaptation strategies, and finally sort of formalize that in a plan. Now, this process is a process that the city and the county are working on in parallel, so that we are working from the same set of underlying assumptions, although we will each develop our own water resources plans and our own capital improvement project plans as outcomes from this, and those will be independent. When the cycle ends and an updated plan is in place, then we can start again so that we can have an updated plan every 5 to 10 years, depending on our needs. In addition, we have ongoing studies that can support our understanding of potential adaptation strategies. So some of the things we will be looking at independent of the planning process are aquifer storage and recovery, either along the Santa Fe River or potentially in some of the Buckman wells, and some of the work going on at the Paseo Real Water Reclamation Facility. As I mentioned, we did do some public outreach this past year. We had 42 individuals at a couple of webinars in October, another 18 individuals in breakout sessions. And based on feedback, we finalized a roadmap for this process, and it is available on our website. This calendar gives sort of a high level overview again I mentioned the 5 years, what we're trying to get done in each of the years. And this calls out sort of opportunities for public engagement and public input and the specific deliverables that we're trying to generate from this process. We did generate the final 5-year planning process document. It's on our website. And now we'll be working towards supply and demand scenarios, and then sort of a project list of adaptation strategies, and finally the plans. So that's kind of where we've been so far on the planning side. And then some next steps. Where are we going next on planning and design and permitting for the return flow pipeline? So the yellow color represents a public process. We are working with the USBR on multiple fronts related to planning. And I'm going to kind of hone in now on the return flow pipeline piece. We are ready with a request for proposals. I guess it's called something different now, so don't hold me to that acronym. But we do have a document ready to go onto the street for engineering firms to develop engineering designs for the return flow pipeline. And we're getting ready to work with the reclamation on a cooperative funding agreement for technical services associated with environmental permitting. We'll have an agenda item related to that later in this agenda. And there will be public notice and scoping opportunities associated with that environmental permitting. And there also will be public notice associated with the state engineer return flow application. The next slide here shows kind of how these things layer together in time. So we're sort of working on 3 fronts. There's an environmental permitting front. And again, this is going to be the NEPA environmental assessment. There's a state engineer permitting front. And then there's a design front. And so we're very close to being ready to initiate sort of the public portion of all 3 of these. At this point, these have slipped a little bit, and I think that in early second quarter, so early April right now, we're targeting being ready to sort of roll all of these things out to the public and make this whole process public. And in terms of how long it will take, we're thinking a couple of years for the environmental permitting. The state engineer has we're hopeful that permit process also will be on a similar timeline, and the design on a similar timeline as well. So by near the end of 2022, we would be hopeful that we will have the permits in place and the design in place to go towards construction. And I think that is my last slide. And so with that, I'll go back to this one. It's got a little bit more information on it, and I would be happy to stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you. I don't see everyone with the screen share, but well, you might have to go back to this slide, but we'll see what the questions are, Jesse. So Commissioner Hanson.
Hey.
You can unmute.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Jesse. So I have a number of questions. So on the return flow pipeline, I haven't heard you mention the county's portion of the water in the return flow pipeline, a credit for us. Is that not something that you are working on or considering?
Madam Chair and Commissioner Hanson, that is something that we're working on, but it's not, we don't have anything formal. We don't have a formal agreement in place with the county yet, so we don't have anything that we're able to share publicly. I can just say that we are on a promising trajectory in terms of having some involvement in this pipeline with the county, I believe.
So I just want to state kind of for the record that this 2017 Carrero or study, it might have had the county's name on it, but we were really not participants in that study. For some reason, our logo was used, but not our expertise. And so I just wanted to say it. So one of the questions I have is, I represent the village of Agua Fria, and they have a mutual domestic with water rights. And they have sewers that go to the Paseo Real. Is that the correct name? Yeah, okay. So their water, once it leaves the village, their water goes to the Paseo Real plant. So how are you calculating that part of the village of Agua Fria's mutual domestic water credit? And then how are you categorizing the water coming from the sewer water coming from Aldea or Las Campanas that also has a sewer plant? So I'll let you answer those and then I'll go on.
Okay, those are very good questions. And there is a certain amount of water that enters our, well, let's call it a sewer shed. There's a certain amount of water in the sewer shed that is not sourced from the 4 potable City of Santa Fe sources that I mentioned. And we do have a handle on estimating that. There are domestic wells, Agua Fria, as you mentioned. There are places where water enters the sewer system that didn't from other sources. And so we estimate those at approximately 300 acre feet per year. And that those inflows are taken into account when we account for how much unconsumed San Juan Chama water is available for the return flow pipeline. So those returns will not end up in the return flow pipeline.
So will that be added to the downstream water users or into the river?
That water will go into either non-potable reuse, the Purple Pipe, or the lower Santa Fe River.
Well, if it goes to the Purple plant and it's coming from the county, then it seems like the Purple Pipe takes care of city parks and city facilities. And if my mutual domestic water is going, I believe there should be some return flow credit from the mutual domestic for their water. And I don't know how that would work. If it would work on the Santa Fe River, it might be a question for John D'Antonio, the state engineer. But this has just been brought to my attention, and I've been trying to think about what actually what that does. I can imagine that the citizens of Agua Fria would want that water to stay in the river wherever it went. And especially since it's county water, I think they would want it to stay in the county.
Commissioner, I apologize. I'm sorry to interrupt. I would like to answer that question. It is my understanding, and perhaps somebody on the phone who knows it better can confirm, that in the city and county water resources agreement, all effluent at the Paseo Real Water Reclamation Facility does belong to the city.
Okay, I'll have to read the annexation agreement again. I've only read it like 3 times or 4 times or 5 times, but I'll see what it says also. And you may be right, but I was speaking with somebody who does water resources, and they mentioned that mutual domestics have ability to have return flow credits.
Commissioner, this is Bill Schneider speaking, and that is correct. And so the ultimate goal in terms of holistic planning with respect to credits for releases of native water, not San Juan Chama water, that would go to the lower Santa Fe River, are achievable for discharge credits. And that is certainly something that we anticipate will come out of the city and county water planning efforts here over the next couple of years. So certainly that is of interest, I think, of all parties, to your point.
Okay, well, I just wanted to bring that up because I feel like it is an important point that I don't want it to be forgotten. And I have concern about this return flow credit pipeline. One other item that Commissioner Hamilton and I are both concerned about, I know, and I might let her speak to it if she wishes to, but is making sure that the pipeline goes close enough to the Buckman treatment plant that that water could then be used during a very severe drought for water to go back into the system for drinking. And Commissioner Hamilton, I can't see you, but if you'd like to chime in, I'm happy to have your input.
We've over time had in a lot of interactions with the city, with Bill Schneider and Jesse and all on potential for future DPR, and I think those discussions are still on the table, and so and frankly could also, I assume that they'll be integrated into like the 5-year cycle of water planning for consideration. Is that a rational assumption, Dr. Roach?
It is a rational assumption. I think that the current alignment of the pipeline goes right past BDD. At this time, we don't have plans for DPR, but should the technical and economic and hydrologic landscapes change sufficiently, then it would be an option. It will always be an option that we will consider.
And that would be the same for ASR, for example, right? You indicated some studies of ASR that you anticipate doing to support the planning process.
Correct. And that's exactly where the planning process fits in if we do have this return flow pipeline in place and we're able to stretch our water resources, then the planning process also helps us look at in this sort of interim period where we have built for the future, what are the best ways to look at utilizing aquifer storage and recovery, for example, on lower times in the year when there's less demand. So all of those ideas, no idea is off the table in the planning process. And those ideas certainly have already sort of filtered up to the top of things that we're considering.
So, I mean, just in that regard, and sorry to take up your time, Commissioner Hanson, but would that adding DPR as a near-term future study item might be a good idea if there's more information that's needed on it before it could be considered in the future?
Yes, I think in my opinion and in the opinion of the feasibility study, at this time, it's not an established enough technology, and it's more resource efficient to move the water to the Rio Grande and then bring it back in, bring other water back in. But it remains on the table for us if conditions change in any of those aspects enough.
And go ahead, sorry.
And if and when and as that's happening in the planning process, then additional study is certainly the right thing to do.
And you're actually considering doing projections for future that, you know, climate change impacts and whatnot to examine more close, I mean, how the difference between demand and supply might be affected by hydrologic conditions, which may or may not make the consideration of something like that important, change its priority.
Yes, that's correct. And so it'll be interesting to see if when we look out 80 years into the future, the latest set of climate change models show a hydrologic condition that is different enough that in our planning model, DPR has a significant advantage over a return flow credit.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. I think for the public, it would be really helpful for you to define DPR and ASR. We might know what it means, but I think that the public needs to understand those terms. So if you want to give out.
Yes, thanks, Commissioner. So DPR stands for direct potable reuse, and this would be a technology that essentially, and as I understand it, it would probably involve reverse osmosis at this point, a very energy intensive process, which could allow you to treat effluent to potable drinking standards. So that's DPR, direct potable reuse. And then ASR is aquifer storage and recovery. And that the idea there is to enhance in some fashion recharge to an aquifer during periods where you have water available to do so, so that you can then extract that water later when you're in a drier condition.
So back to the Santa Fe River and the La Cienega and downstream. So that area of the Santa Fe River residents are really quite concerned about their springs and their wells drying up. And even my constituents in Agua Fria are complaining about their wells drying up. And so I want to know how this is going to help them. How are we going to make sure that we do actually have aquifer restorative water in the lower Santa Fe River?
Okay, so from the perspective of Agua Fria, which is upstream of Paseo Real Water Reclamation Facility, I do actually believe there's a benefit to Agua Fria as well with this return flow pipeline, because the return flow pipeline gives us flexibility to utilize our Santa Fe River water differently. And so One of the ideas I mentioned is aquifer storage and recovery on the Santa Fe River. If we're able to get a permit for that, we may have more flexibility in how we release water. Or currently the Living River is just bypass flows. We don't release water from storage to support the Living River. With an aquifer storage and recovery program on the Santa Fe River, that could change and we could actually be able to release water from storage. So there's potential for flexibility with operations if we're able to utilize our San Juan Chama water more efficiently. In terms of the downstream users below Paseo Real Water Reclamation Facility, I believe that there's maybe two answers to your question. One answer is that if the county, as we have had conversations with the county about their potential involvement in the return flow pipeline, the lower Santa Fe River is an issue that needs to be addressed as part of that potential partnership and some sort of a planning process on the lower Santa Fe River. So we'll have to stand by for that, but that is one potential scenario. And then the other is just that we believe operationally. So this is a perennial stretch of water. So there's constantly recharge to wells along this stretch of river. And although historically in the last, let's say these 7 years, there's been maybe 4,000, almost 4,000 acre feet a year. No more, more than 4,000 acre feet a year of discharge to the lower Santa Fe River. 2,000 acre feet per year for irrigators and wetlands, I believe, is sufficient if we can find a way to manage operationally use our native resources so that we are maintaining, so that we distribute this flow through the year in a way that's helpful to those downstream users.
Okay, I think that that's all the questions I have for right now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Jesse, can you stop your screen? Okay, thank you. I don't see any other hands. Does anyone have any other comments for Jesse? Okay. Well, Jesse, I think your report is really nicely prepared. I like some of this software. It's very good. Okay, thank you. Let me get back to the agenda. So next item is 9A, discussion and possible action on BDD board support for NEPA permit change. Kyle, you and Rick.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you. Can I share screen, Jamie?
Yes, please.
Okay. Can you see this okay, Council or Chair?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
But we also have it in our attachments.
Well, unfortunately, Jamie and I had a little bit of a crossed wire with getting this memo into the packet. As Ms. Long pointed out, fortunately, it's not a very long memo. So you all got this memo earlier today, and I'd like to just go ahead and walk through it briefly as by way of introduction. So the NEPA permits for the BDD project.
Kyle, can I just stop you there? Now it is rather small, but it looks to me like it's the same thing we have in our packets. Are you saying that what's in our packets is not correct?
Counselor, you may have it in your packet. I don't know that it went out initially last week. So
okay. Well, just in case anybody can't see it, it's in our packets. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. And I want to apologize for any crossed wires.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Under what tab do we have this?
Oh, well, it's under the agenda. Are you in Prime Gov?
No. So I was looking, but I can go, could it have been in the Buckman? Okay, well, that helps.
It's under 4A.
9A.
Which on board docs, it's 4A.
Okay, Jamie Ray, you had your hand up.
Yeah, so it wasn't in the packets that were printed that the commissioners received, but
Okay,
it was sent to Sarah to upload onto whatever you guys use on the county website, and it was uploaded onto our Prime Gov. So that's why, Chair, you see it, and whoever is looking at a printed packet does not see it.
Okay, well,
And
I guess I can't help you with what you're looking at, commissioners.
no,
No,
I can
we have
go.
it on board docs. We have it.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
just
going
not
to board
printed.
docs.
Okay, and we'll just stick with Prime Gov over here. Okay, and as long as everybody's on the same page, Kyle, you want to continue?
thank you, Madam Chair. And again, apologize for any confusion around the memo. It's before you as well on the share screen. So the NEPA permits requested for the BDD project some 18 years ago requested and received coverage for up to 8,730 acre feet per year of combined diversion of San Juan Chama project water and what we call native pre-1907 Rio Grande water. Those NEPA permits are held and managed by the board pursuant to the board agreements to support the diversion of water rights under state engineer permits that are held and managed directly by the project partners. The proposed San Juan Chama return flow pipeline that Dr. Roach has just finished describing to you contemplates increased San Juan Chama project water diversions only, with no changes to the BDD project intake, the BDD project rights of way and easements, or the water treatment plant. In order to make the BDD project's NEPA permit changes consistent with the proposed SJC return flow pipeline, the city will make application to the relevant federal agencies, and a scoping process with stakeholder input will be conducted. So just to add one level additional detail to this background and summary before I speak to the recommendation, with the construction of this pipeline that Dr. Roach has just finished describing to you, the BDD project will be asked to go over the 8730 limit of its current permits. And what we want to make sure of is consistent with all the other permitting that's going on with the project, that when the project, I'm sorry, with the return flow project, that the BDD project as it currently sits is asked to divert 8,731 acre feet, where that first additional acre foot and everything above it is only San Juan Chama water. We want to ensure that the that those permissions that we sought some 18 years ago are made consistent with the proposed project that Dr. Roach has just described. So board staff, council, and consultants are all joining in this recommendation that the BDD board vote. This is an action item on your agenda this evening, that the BDD board vote to support those requested changes to the BDD permits consistent with the proposed pipeline. As Dr. Roach said, there is a scoping process with extensive stakeholder input that is contemplated in the near couple of weeks or month or so, and that will provide a ample and robust process for hearing and addressing all the concerns that the public wishes to raise. I want to just clarify for the board that I've been thinking about the proposed project as components. I've shared this mental model with Dr. Roach, and I think it fits with his intent. And that is that there's the sort of the footprint of the new pipeline. That's one major component of this proposed project. There are obviously the Santa Fe River issues that have been raised in this meeting and in other meetings. And then the third major component is discharging this water to the Rio Grande and then allowing for the increased diversions out of the Rio Grande at the current BDD intake. So the issue before the board this evening is really just half of one of those thirds as an action item. Obviously, you all have asked extensive questions about the whole proposed pipeline, as you will, but just wanted to be very clear for the board this evening that that this action is really related to 1/2 of 1/3 of the elements of this proposed project. I'll go ahead and stop screen share so people can actually see each other. Also just want to note, in addition to Dr. Roach, we do have John Dupuy, who has zoomed in as a participant, and also the city's main environmental permit advisor and consultant, David Batts, who many of us have worked with on projects around New Mexico. He has a national practice working on NEPA permitting. There he is. You can now see a smiling face in front of another water project somewhere in the West. And so we stand for any questions that you may have. I will say that given the scoping process that Dr. Roach has mentioned, we are asking for board action on this matter this evening, if that's what you wish to do. So for that, I'll stop and stand for questions.
Thank you, Kyle. I see
ma'am.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, this makes sense, and the scoping process, I've been involved with those. I get that. But I assume that there'll be the NEPA aspect of just this 1/2 of the 1/3 of the whole scoping process, but part of this will go to the state engineer, right? And there'll be numbers associated with it that come from the scoping. Is that a correct assumption? That's just the prelude to the question. So in thinking about it, so this is a general ask right now, but then the permit revision will be a specific ask. So I'm wondering if we might make this so that we approve the process going forward, but then get a report back before the permit requests are submitted for board, a presentation, and for board approval of actual submittal of the permit request, or something along those lines. Make it a 2-step process because there are no specific numbers associated with this. And I can think of lots of reasons that it would be beneficial to water operations to alter this permit that, we've been talking for a while about this, but.
I'd like to hand the microphone to Dr. Roach, because the city has been heading up its own discussions with the Office of the State Engineer about the exact numbers that they are going to be seeking in both the state engineer process and other procedures.
Okay, thank you, Jesse.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Hamilton, thank you. So we will have a specific number for our OSE permit. That OSE permit is sort of separate from this action, but that number will be consistent with the environmental permit that we're talking about here. And we will have that number, I believe, and David, please jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but that we will have that number once we sort of begin this process.
So the reason I'm asking, and thank you, David, but before you jump in, there's a number associated with the environmental permit now, but so that number is going to be increased, and it just makes some sense to me, not to hamstring the process going forward, but literally because the board is approving an unscoped request, which is fine. You need to do that now, but we could approve the unscoped request to get the scoping and then have it come back to us with the more complete information. Just a thought. I mean, if there are serious procedural reasons not to do it, I'd love to hear them, but I don't know what everybody else thinks. I'm throwing it out because it makes some sense to me.
Does anyone, okay, Commissioner Hanson, are you going to respond to that? Because we have Councilor Carol Romero Worth next.
Okay, fine. Go ahead, Councilor Romero Worth.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Did Dr. Roach want to answer the question about whether this would seriously hamstring things to come back to us? I don't think we got an answer to that.
Right. Okay.
Okay,
Jesse?
thank you. I think I'm a bit over my head on the environmental permitting process side of things. And so I don't know if Kyle or David has an answer. I don't think I have an answer to that specific question.
All right, Kyle or David, any of you want to answer?
Sure. I was just going to I was going to formally invite David to unmute his microphone and let us know what number he thinks might go into the application so we can perhaps progress on the question that's been raised.
Okay.
So we will be coming up with a number, and that number will probably be around, well, I don't want to give a specific number without being able to consult what I have here, and I can probably look it up very shortly for you. But that number will be part of what we call our proposed action that will go out to the public and that they will hear about and what it will be associated with. So as you know, this is a very public process once it goes into the NEPA realm. So we really have to have all of our ducks in a row, and we'll have to make sure that we have all our understanding of what that maximum diversion amount could be. And we'll have to explain how San Juan Chama water works to the general public because it's very confusing, obviously. So we'll have all that laid out and how that looks from an accounting standpoint before we go to the public.
I would just, you know, for the other board members, to clarify my thinking, this is the process is logical, but it's technically the BDD board holds the permit, right? So I think it would be nice for us to hear it before it gets submitted. That's, I think, the only kind of issue I'm raising. That there would be nice. I think it would be appropriate for that to be part of the process we're approving tonight or being asked to vote on.
I think that's fair. And I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but I will tell you how we're thinking about this is that at this time, we have a facility whose capacity is far beyond its permit. And we feel that we will probably be looking for a diversion somewhere near plant capacity so that we don't do this again until at such time as we may want to expand plant capacity.
Right, and that makes sense.
So is that enough information, or do we need to nail down a number? And if we do, I think we could come back, but we'd probably come right back at the next board meeting.
No, I wasn't asking for the nailed down number. I think just in the process, I was asking before it goes, I mean, we vote on this tonight and it initiates the process, but before it goes all the way through, like, you know, to changing the permit, since it's our permit, to hear the report back on what's been scoped and what's been, you know, what's going to be presented. That's all.
I certainly expect, for my part in supporting the work that's being done, not knowing what the outcome might be yet of the work, because the scoping is still to come, is that there would be regular reports back to the board over the coming probably several quarters, right, David? If scoping is started in March or April, there'll be some work to report back in the late spring and summer, assuredly, right?
Absolutely. We will be doing periodic reports. So we'll do what we call a scoping report. So that will be one of our first outcomes, and we'll be able to report to you what the public's saying about this proposal. Then we'll have a draft document. We'll have that out for public review. So it's about a 6-month process once we officially kick it off. So you're correct, Kyle. We'll probably be able to come back every 2 months or so and give you some form of a viable update.
That's acceptable to me. I would just like to confirm that the board would get, you know, see those reports and get a briefing on it and be incorporated in the ongoing process.
What I'd like to suggest, Commissioner, if it's okay, is that we plan on coming back in April and June at a minimum, so we can give you a sense of the scoping kickoff. And then, you know, see how those updates go and how many more are consistent with the natural progression of the process. But certainly April and then June seem like they're going to be heavy lift months for this, the public and stakeholder engagement part of the process. So I'm volunteering Jesse's consultant, David, when I said that, but I think it's probably responsive to your request, Commissioner.
Yeah, it would be.
And I would only just say maybe not specifically April. Let's not promise April. Let's promise the first board meeting after we begin scoping that gives us enough time to get information into the packet.
I'm fine with that. That's responsive. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Romero Worth.
So let me just, I was going to make a motion that we approve the staff recommendation as it is. Was that okay, Commissioner Hamilton, with the information you got about the reporting?
I would still like the reports, but I don't feel any hard need for it to be in the motion.
Okay.
Because I trust the staff will bring it back to us and that there will be real opportunity. If the board has like substantive questions, we'll have the opportunity to address them. And
okay, so you're okay with the motion being just to move?
I probably am, yeah.
All right, so then, Madam Chair, I'd like to move the staff recommendation.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been seconded by J.C. Helms. Commissioner Hanson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So at the moment on this agreement, it says receive coverage for up to 8,730 acre feet per year of combined diversion of San Juan Chama project water. So, and native. So that covers, at the moment, that covers all of the water that the county and the city and our native water that we have access to, and more than possibly we have access to?
Commissioner, that's a great question. The 8730 is made up of several constituent numbers. It was the city's projected need back in 2002 of 5,230 acre feet. It was the county's projected need of 1,700 acre feet back at that time, and Las Campanas' projected need of 1,800 acre feet as the private partner in the project. And those three numbers summed to 8730. And each of the different utilities has a little different composition of water rights within those projected needs. And of course, the utilities, certainly the city and the county, continue to do all of the out year planning that Jesse started his informational item with, which is underpinning the proposed project. Does that help answer that question?
So does that number need to go up if these are 2002 numbers?
Well, the diversion capacity need of 8730, that ceiling needs to be raised, yes, ma'am, in order to allow for the increased diversion of San Juan Chama water at the intake.
So that is what you will do with this permit, right? Is raise the number.
Yes, ma'am.
And
the raising of that number, just to be really clear, and I think we've been consistent, and I would just want to underscore it, the additional water over 8730 will all be San Juan Chama water only, which in our current environmental permits was deemed to have no effect on endangered species and other issues of concern downstream of the project. So that's why all of the analysis that Jesse's described has really pointed at this to be the logical next step for really Santa Fe area water planning.
okay, but the Buckman board holds the environmental permit for this NEPA process, correct?
The board currently holds the current project's NEPA permits, and the individual utilities hold their state engineer permits. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and it'll stay that way.
There's nothing proposed to be changed about that arrangement with this proposed project.
Okay. Okay, I think I have answers to all my questions at the moment.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this matter? Okay, seeing none, Karen, would you please call for the voice vote?
Sure. Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Mr. Helms,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson,
Yes.
and Chair Vihel Coppler.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Next item is request for BDD acknowledgement of BDD shared pool agreement between the City of Santa Fe and the Santa Fe County. John Dupuy.
Good evening, Madam Chair. And the agreement has passed the City Council and County Commission. And it was discussed previously that once that occurred, we would bring the agreement back for acknowledgement by the BDD. And the agreement is attached to the packet materials. And if there are any questions regarding it, I believe we've given a broad overview of it before, but if there are any follow-up questions, I'm more than willing to answer them, and there are others who could help as well.
Move to acknowledge.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, thank you. Karen, will you please call for the voice vote? Karen? Okay.
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Mr. Helms,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson,
Yes.
and Chair Vihel Coppler.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Next item is the election of chair and vice chair for the Buckman Direct Diversion Board. So Nancy Long.
Yes, Madam Chair and members of the board. As you all are aware, we annually elect a chair and a vice chair. That's provided for in the Joint Powers Agreement. Our rules of order provide that that election happens in February and that we rotate the position between the city and the county for the chair, and then the vice chair shall be elected from the opposite entity. And since you, Madam Chair, are a city councilor, the chair for this next ensuing term will be from the county and the vice chair from the city. So you may now ask for some nominations.
All right, well, I'm going to take the prerogative of the chair and first speak and just thank everyone for a wonderful year. It's been a very good, at first I have to admit this board was just like flew over my head because I'm not really a engineer, water, scientific kind of person, but I really have learned a lot and I have enjoyed chairing the board. It's just been a great thing and I've loved working with all of you. So, I mean, I'll still be here, but obviously I won't be running the meetings and what a relief. So again, I appreciate all of you. I would like to nominate Anna Hansen for next year, for chair, for starting with the next meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay. Well, I think that's all we can do right now because we rotate. So can I ask for a voice vote?
Okay. Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Mr. Helms,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson,
Yes.
and Chair Vihel Coppler.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I see Commissioner Hamilton's hand up.
Yes, I'd like to, first of all, thank you for your service this past year.
You're
It
welcome.
was very much appreciated and very well done. And then I would like to nominate Councilor Carol Romero Worth for vice chair.
Okay, do I hear a second? Seconded by Commissioner Hanson.
Yes, I will second that.
Okay, so Karen, will you please call for the voice vote?
Sure. Counselor Romero Worth,
Sure.
Mr. Mr. Helms,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson,
Yes.
and Chair Vihil Coppler.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I just want everybody to know that we didn't use the Lyndon B. Johnson deal where he said, if nominated, I will not accept, and if elected, I will not serve. Y'all are in, so that's it. Okay.
Good historic memory. Oh, my God.
I'm
I'd like
older
to
than
say
you.
something. Whom am I
Jesse, is
talking?
that you?
I just
Jesse?
want to say one thing.
Yes.
I have really enjoyed having Joanne as the chair. I think she's fabulous, and I like the fact that she's not a technical type. I'm not particularly a technical type either, and I have enjoyed her high spirits and good sense of humor the whole way. And thank you for your service.
Well, I appreciate that, JC. Thank you. Commissioner Hanson.
Yes, I want to acknowledge you also, Councilor Vihil Coppler. You have been a wonderful chair, and it's been an honor to work with you also on this board. And so I'm grateful, and I am looking forward to being chair of the Buckman Direct Diversion Board, and I'm looking forward to working with Councilor Romero Worth and all the members of this board as we move forward, because we're going to have a big year, and every year seems to be a big year at the Buckman Direct Diversion. So I think it will be really important, all the work that we do. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councilor Carol Romero Worth.
Counselor, I just want to say thank you for the last year of service on this board and for leading the charge. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate that too. Don't forget, I'll still be here. So when I show up next meeting, don't kick me out. Okay, next item is matters from staff. Mr. Carpenter, do you have anything?
Actually, Madam Chair, it's matters from the board.
Oh,
But
really?
you could, yes, but if there was something you needed to communicate to staff, you certainly could.
Yeah. My agenda says item 10 is matters from staff. But, oh well.
Mine
Anyway.
says matters from the board. That's funny.
How weird. Well, we have a ghost here.
The paper book says matters from the board.
Okay. Well, we've already had a lot of information from staff and Rick gave his report. So I'll go ahead and follow your lead. So matters from the board. Anyone have any board matters? No board matters. Yay. I think this is the fastest we've gotten out of this meeting in a long time, and we don't have an executive session. So the next meeting will be Thursday, March 4th at 4 o'clock. So you are hereby released and we're adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.